when we feel like we're lacking peace and order, it's because we haven't brought our day to God. It's so important to have a thoughtful schedule so I can really sanctify my time well in many areas of our lives, whether it's financial or physical in terms of how much weight we're gaining or not. Now that you have the Aura rings, all this information, there's a lot of feedback. But in terms of like my dreams and God's plans for me that I've discussed with him and for the world, there isn't a lot of accountability. Like it has to come from me. And I think that's where the goals come in to make it kind of concrete.
For a while, I felt like shame in wanting to work. I felt like as a Catholic woman that I shouldn't want to do that I should only really want to be doing things with my kids or things with my husband or things at home. And I would just love to get your perspective on that. Welcome to The Catholic Woman, the show where we as Catholic women navigate the modern world together. I'm your host, Marie Hanson, and welcome back, or welcome if it's your first time to the show. I am so excited for today's episode because we're going to be talking about work-life balance, the kind of myth that is, what it means to live an integrated life, just something I'm very passionate about. I'm sure, as you guys can tell, you know that I'm a mom, a wife, I have little kids, I run a business, so it's just a very important topic that I think we talk about because no one is doing it all. And sometimes Instagram or the podcast can look like we're doing it all, and we're not. So we're going to talk about that today, and I think it's going to be a really good show. But before we dive in, I do want to tell you guys again about my little presence program. I am so passionate about being present in our life and really hearing the presence of God, being able to feel the presence of God so we can actually follow his nudges in our life. And so I've put together just a $5 program for this where I text you 3 times a week. I also email out journal prompts and for deeper thought once a week. And it's only $5 a month. I kept it as cheap as I possibly could to cover the software costs because I am so passionate about this. I just want to make it accessible to as many women as possible. However, to make it even more accessible and so that you don't spend a penny on something that you're like, I don't know about this, I'm going to offer you guys a first month totally free. All you have to do is use the code CWP for Catholic Woman Podcast at checkout. It's at catholicwoman.co/present, and I'll link it in the show notes like always. But yeah, I just was like, you know what? I'd like for you to try it for free. I believe firmly that it will change your life and that 1 month alone will change your life. And so I'd like to give that to you for free. So use the code CWP for your first month free and check out the link in the show notes to join us. All right, so today we are going to be talking with Carolyn. So Carolyn Espinoza, wife, mother, and co-founder of Sole Atelier, LLC. She manages their brand vision, storytelling, and customer experience, drawing on her background in education, marketing, management, and fashion to craft products rooted in beauty and purpose. So Carolyn, welcome to the show today.
Thanks for having me, Marie.
This is a topic near and dear to my heart. I am a very multi-passionate woman, as when we were chatting before, it sounds like you are too. And I really want to talk about this myth of work-life balance. We always hear balance, but I don't think there's ever truly a time in life where everything is going to be balanced. We're always going to be in and out of balancing different things. And so I just really want to talk about this. So let's set some ground framework for today's conversation. And I know you use the word integrated life. So can you talk about what that means? What do you mean by living an integrated life? And how did you first get into this topic? Because I know you're very passionate about it.
Totally. So kind of how I first got into it. As a young professional, I was in Chicago and I was attending a lot of talks, as many as I could, from different Catholic speakers on living faith through your work. And I was also involved in volunteer boards where this term work-life balance is thrown out a lot. And there's a lot of successful women that I was meeting who I was like, wow, they must have this. At the same time, in the back of my head, I knew that I wanted to have a family one day. I had these creative ideas that I wanted to turn into realities. I was an extrovert, so I wanted to soak up all these opportunities for growth, friendship, engaging in beauty, culture, and developing my own interior life. And at the same time, I was coaching various women kind of a little bit younger than me. And I kept hearing the same issues of burnout, kind of striving for this work-life balance, trying to do it all. And so I started taking it to my prayer and thinking about my own experience. And I began to realize that really we weren't made to do it all, like you said. But so many times we have this temptation to, and I think it's pride at the end of the day, but to think that we can do it all or almost do it all. And that this is something like highly virtuous and good and should be like put on a pedestal. Um, Part of the journey that kind of helped me shift this mindset too is I took an amazing course by Dr. Kevin Majors. So it's called Optimal Work. And kind of his idea is how to like help people strive for your highest ideals in your work. So I was like, I want to get concrete. I want to know the neuroscience behind it and figure out what's going on in my brain so I can really utilize kind of those human tools to work to my highest good. And as a Catholic, for me, that also meant sanctity. So it's kind of an interesting overlap. And so um, we know that like before the fall, we are made for work. And so most of what we do as well can be considered work, whether it's planning a vacation, getting our house in order, our actual 9 to 5 job. And so this kind of like helped me change my perspective because he brought up different things like distraction versus interruption. And so distraction is something kind of that, I allow because I'm lacking order, so maybe I have my phone next to me while I'm trying to do a really focused hour of work, and so then I keep seeing like, "Oh, the update about the game, like who just scored a point," or, "My Facebook Marketplace got an interest in it," whatever. So distractions are things kind of from the outside that I allow to come in and I create as a way of pulling my attention away from what I should actually be doing versus an interruption, which could be somebody actually needing my attention. So, an employee coming in and having a question, my son needing my help with something. And that's something that instead of trying to do at the same time as my work, that I can actually convert my whole attention towards that particular interruption. So, if it is my son, help him get his shoes on or whatever he needs, and then go fully back to my work. And so that this is actually um, better living this like integrated life. So whatever I'm doing, that I'm doing what I ought to be doing, when I ought to be doing it, for the right reason. So for God, for love, um, and because I want to, like freely. And so this for me was like a major mind shift, because not only did it help me become more intentional in my work, but also in my life of prayer, my friendships, and it took me away from this idea of like, okay, we work during the week and then we live during the weekend. And so it's kind of off for anybody who's Catholic that no, we're the same person, we're body and soul unity throughout it all. And so throughout it all, I'm working and I'm living at the same time. But it's like, how am I doing it? For who am I doing it? Am I doing it at the right time as well?
That's such a good distinction you made between distraction, interruption, and that's something I talk a lot about in my with my whole present spiel is like putting roadblocks in place of those distractions, but interruptions are different. And, God can be interrupting our life in different ways, whether it's through our kids or through a coworker or, this, that, or the other thing. So, how do you, distractions aside, let's talk about interruptions. How do you determine which interruptions, let's say you're in the middle of a project or a task, how do you determine if an interruption is worth turning your full attention to that interruption or if it's something that should be pushed off later? How do you just prioritize all the different things that life throws at us that aren't distractions? And I know there's distractions to add to that pile, but let's just talk about like
Yeah.
our tasks in front of us and interruptions and all the things that go on in our daily life. How do you even begin to prioritize what's important to do first and where to put your attention?
I think your last question was good. I think we do have to have a set schedule or an ideal schedule in order. And sometimes we avoid creating that because we're like, oh, each day is so different. We're like, yes, but there still has to be an ideal. And there should be a thoughtfulness behind what we're doing. So it's not just scatterbrain. So even down to like I plan the days that I'm gonna do laundry. I plan like when I go grocery shopping, what are the foods I'm gonna need? Same thing for at home and for my work as well. So like what is my ideal towards what I'm getting done? Another thing that I think helps outside of having this ideal schedule is also having my top 3 priorities for the week. And so, again, instead of like, I have so many priorities, I'm going to do it all, like 3 is not enough. Like, I hear that a lot. But in the end of the day, it's like, okay, actually, what are the 3? And if we're able to kind of synthesize what are those things, it also helps us figure out, okay, is this interruption something I turn my attention towards? Or can I put it off for later? Or no, this one of my top 3, I need to get it done. And I think outside of that, it's also helpful to have kind of guiding goals for the year. Um, and maybe something that we review monthly as well, with the idea that if we don't have kind of these guiding lights or these goals or this general idea or the schedule that we can then check back in, we end up being focused on everything that feels immediate. And so like, oh, this just has to get done now. Like this has to get in this moment versus like important. And so then we're kind of dragged along through life instead of us like freely choosing, like, okay, I thought I was going to get this done, but now I'm going to have to move it for this because I made XYZ a priority. And in that sense, we're kind of like leading the ship versus being dragged by it. I also think in terms of interruptions, when it has to do with people who need my help that couldn't do it otherwise, typically I'll turn towards that. Also, is it time sensitive? Is there an emergency involved? Obviously, kind of those like natural questions, like, yes, then I'm going to take care of those first. Um, but if not, kind of like, how first in my heart can I take care of God? So, am I putting Him first in my day? Then these priorities that I've talked about and kind of discerned through my prayer and then discuss with my husband as well, because he's my like teammate in life. um, and then the other things come. And so that's kind of my, like, general schema for determining, what to tackle first.
Yeah, you made a really good point too about picking 3 things, and as someone who is a chronic overachiever, I'm just like, I wanna do it all, I wanna do everything, very high
It's hard.
energy towards that. It is so hard to pick 3 things. However, like you said, if you just have this laundry list, which it's okay to have an ongoing laundry list, but to pick out of those, what's the
Totally.
priority, the top 3 for the week or the day or whatever it is, everything that comes your way will feel like an emergency almost, and then you're just hustle, 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 hustle through every little task. And at that, I feel like those are the days where you feel like you got nothing done because every little thing became an
Yeah.
emergency or a priority in your life. And it reminds me a lot of budgeting almost, where until you have like a very clear like budget, and it takes a while to finagle, so I'd like to talk about how to create this schedule, and I'm sure it takes like months to massage out and truly like figure out what's a good working schedule for you, and I'm sure it changes throughout the seasons of life as well, as does budgeting. It reminds me a lot of that because if you don't have like a clear plan and clear goals, you'll get dragged through the month and wonder where your money went instead of telling it where to go. And I've definitely been through that. So I know like just I know a lot of people are struggling with the financial side. We've talked with our listeners a lot about that. So this is just like a very easy connection to me. And I'm sure also getting your daily life in order, your priorities straight, probably helps. Once you have order in one area of your life, it's easier to have order in another area of life, etc. So I want to talk logistics about creating these schedules because this is something I struggle with. I was so good at scheduling my life in college and before kids, and then kids come along, and it is so hard. I feel like, especially the first 15, 16 months of life, because they are so needy. And toddlers are needy too, but babies just need you for
Yes.
literally everything. And I felt like it was so hard to create a schedule, and I'm still struggling with massaging out a new schedule and for our life now. But how do you create a schedule that'll work in one season of life? And truly, I feel like it's a little exhausting when you are a mom of little kids. I know not all of our listeners are moms, but something that I really struggled with was when a schedule worked for a month, the next month it wouldn't work because our family needs would change. And so that felt frustrating to me. And so for a while, I really, really gave up kind of on scheduling in general because it was just disheartening to have to change it so much. So do you have any advice for that? And like, how do you create a solid schedule in your life, or at least an aspirational schedule, without packing in too much? Because that was my problem too, is I always try to pack in way too much, and
Yeah.
picking ways to prioritize tasks throughout the week.
I think so for creating a schedule, and I think you brought up a really good point with kids, everything just changes and your idea of productivity is flipped upside down. And
Mm-hmm.
you're like, I didn't do anything today. I just like fed the baby and kept cleaning up after like the messes that were
Yep.
being made, which is good. And it actually is productive in a sense of like you're getting to heaven if you're doing it for the right way, the right reason. But I think two things are super important to have like bookends. And I think this is um helpful because we are like body, soul, unity again. And so having a time that you wake up that's concrete and a time that you go to bed, like set those kind of end blocks first and communicate it with the people who need to know. So if you're single with your roommates, like, hey, like nothing personal, like my day ends at this time and like I'm going to bed at this time. With your husband, it's good to have like the same time, ideally, if you can. And so having those two like cornerstones, I think, because when we get rest, then we're able to like see the needs of others better, serve them, and also like give back. And then the other thing that really helped me is having kind of an anchor in my day. For me, I was able to do and am able to do daily mass. And I think just having um that, like, quiet time and that peace to start the day. Now, like, we're in the cry room and he's coloring, running around, playing, but I'm like, "I'm here." Like, I'm focused, is really helpful too to kind of give you perspective and kind of step back from the day. The other thing is, like, getting outside in nature. I think sometimes we get so much into our list and our ideal schedule that we're just aren't able to, like, breathe and be outside. I think movement, even if it's freezing, like, just get out for 10 minutes is so helpful. Um, so I'd have those building blocks in. Then being kind of an over scheduler too and, like, a extrovert, for me, I also found that it was hard figuring out, meeting up with friends and, like, wanting to be there for them. And so even discussing, like, "Okay, at least once a week, I need to get like FaceTime with a friend. And so putting that in from the very beginning, like this day I'm meeting up with this person, X, Y, and Z. And then the rest of the days I'm dedicating a set time while I'm nursing the baby or right before bed or right when I wake up to texting or messaging that one friend so that you still, like as women, we need the community. And so keeping that community close and fostering it, I think is super helpful. But once you have those two end blocks and then that like scheduling for a friend, that time for God. I also think it's important to have one day, and ideally, if it's Sunday, that's the super soon, the best option, but of rest for your family where you just don't schedule anything. It's together time, quiet, like you can breathe and kind of like reset for the week. And then through the day to day, I think it's helpful to think of like kind of take a week and see what you're doing during those times. So just be observant and maybe at the end of the day, write down kind of what your general schedule is going through the day, what it looks like, and then reflect back on that next week and be like, all right, so this time I probably could have used this time more wisely in the morning. This time is when the baby's hungry, so I need to pause and feed him. Um, this is how many times a week we need to do laundry, so I should dedicate like this day towards like laundry during this time. This afternoon block is open, and so this one I can do my, outdoor activities, my shopping, my running around. I can do a golden hour just dedicated totally on going deep in my work because the baby is napping during this time. But I think it helps to, like, look back and not just, kind of impose on yourself, but see, like, how am I living it naturally without creating a schedule, and then where can I add more order to it, and then try it out, and then keep editing it. Um but I think it's also helpful to be, like, flexible with ourselves and be like, "All right," like, looking ahead, like, this week we are gonna be on vacation or we have X, Y, and Z person visiting, so, like, I gotta be okay with the schedule, like, going out the window and, like, it's gonna change. But in order to do that, we need to have the schedule in the first place. And so I think, yeah, editing it each month, I would say, is, like, the most helpful for me, like, having a reflection time, like, "Okay, how am I using my time?" Um, I feel like so many saints are like, "Time is short for loving," and so it's so important to have, like, a thoughtful schedule so I can really sanctify my time well, and not just kind of, like, waste it because it's so easy when I don't have a schedule or if you've ever used those apps on your phone, to see, like, how many times you've picked it up or whatever, it's kind of disheartening. You're like, "Oh my gosh, like, all this time, and I say that I don't have time to do, I don't know, spiritual reading or that I don't have time to call my friend," like, I definitely do. Um, and so really being kind of, like, a little bit, more intentional about, like, how am I using my time and reflective on where is it going.
No one really prepared Catholic women to talk about intimacy. And for the next 60 seconds, we're going to talk about intimacy in a way that's meant for adult ears. So if you have little ones nearby, this is your cue to pop in earbuds. 1, 2, 3, here we go. Okay, you were probably told to wait for sex and that it was bad if you didn't. Then when you got married, you were told sex was holy and good. But when it came to living it out, you were left with silence. Is wanting sex selfish? Is enjoying it too much wrong? Are there boundaries or rules no one explained? Is what we're doing in the bedroom okay, morally speaking? Ellen at Reclaiming Catholic Intimacy is changing the conversation around sex and intimacy for Catholic women. So, if you've ever wondered what the church really says about sex and marriage, grab the free download from Ellen. It breaks down the church's teaching clearly and faithfully so you can stop guessing, stop overreacting, and actually enjoy married sex. Because if you're constantly wondering whether you're doing something wrong, you'll never be able to truly enjoy it. And spoiler alert, God actually wants you to have a good sex life. Get your free download of What the Church Really Says About Sex and Marriage at reclaimingcatholicintimacy.com/CWP. That's reclaimingcatholicintimacy.com/CWP. There's a moment many of us know well. Staring at our closet in the early morning light before Mass, choosing an outfit that reflects not just our taste, but our faith. Beauty, yes, but also reverence. A way of presenting ourselves that feels aligned with who God calls us to be. If you've been looking for clothing that embodies a contemporary, feminine, and modest style, you're going to love Contemporary Saints. They're a Catholic family-owned boutique offering thoughtfully chosen pieces made with sustainable fabrics, named after saints, and designed to help you feel confident and aligned with who God calls you to be without compromising quality or style. Their motto says it perfectly. Modestly you. A boutique that understands that modesty has a different meaning to everyone. And the best part, they make it easy to begin. Enjoy free U.S. shipping on orders over $70, flat rate of $5 for U.S. shipping and $10 for international shipping. Plus, if you subscribe to their emails, you'll receive 15% off your purchase as a little welcome gift. Visit contemporarysaints.com and discover modest fashion that feels like home. Contemporary Saints. Modestly you. I love that. And I like how you do suggest to edit it every month because I do think that's key. Maybe you're single and don't need to edit it necessarily every month, but I do think checking in with it every month, at least at a minimum, is important because your priorities change, your life changes, jobs change, everything changes in life. Seasons change. In summer, you might want your schedule to be different than winter. And so I think it's just really important. And I think that's what I got wrong about scheduling for the longest time was that I just didn't want to change. I wanted to set it and forget it. And that's just not very realistic for creating a schedule. Now, I'd love to know your thoughts. As I've been doing more reflection on what has worked with scheduling in the past for me and what's not working with scheduling now, the best time in my life where I ever had a schedule was in high school and college. And I do believe, just like with retrospection, that's because when things were scheduled on my calendar, they started at that time and they ended at the time I said they would end. Whereas now I will set a work time and I will not be done by the time I say I'm going to be done, and I keep working, and then that throws, everything else off. So
Totally.
this is where I struggle, is with like cutting things off when I say I'm going to cut things off, especially when I have a lot to do. So how do you know? I mean, obviously there are definitely going to be times where you do just have to keep working through what you said you weren't going to do because there's an emergency or it's a priority or XYZ. But how do
Right.
you cut things off when you say you're going to cut things off, even when you really want to or need to keep going with that area of your schedule?
I think it's, again, it's like having that interior priorities in your heart. And so many times, like we have deadlines or time off, so then we can give it to other people, whether that's our husband, that's the meeting with our clients that we said that we were going to have. So it's more so I think it becomes difficult when there aren't other people that we need to show up for, and it's just like us moving on to a task that maybe is like a little less enticing or that we won't get as much feedback from. And I think that's where like the virtue comes in. And it's great that we have that formation when we're young. We have so much structure and it's kind of imposed on us. And so in a sense, there isn't much virtue required. We're just following through kind of the norms and the ropes. And now, because there's so much freedom, there's so much capacity to love, but also to fail at the same time, and so that's where we're like, "Oh, I just wanna, like, do good at something." And you're like, "Well, actually, like, this is good because it's committing to what I said I would do." And then I'm learning things about myself, like, "Wow, I actually think that I need more time to work on this report or more time to work on this." And that's a piece of information that we can store for later and then will help us in our further future projects. There's this Blessed Alvaro del Portillo was in one of the congresses when they were working on Vatican II, and they said that everyone wanted to be on his team for the document they were working on because he started on time and ended on time, and that was it. And it was such like a virtuous but like simple way. Like It's all this information. I mean, it's huge. It's Vatican II. It's a whole like shift for the church. But and it was super important things that they were discussing because like we're starting on time and ending on time. Like we're giving all that, like we're using it well for God and we're doing it to the best of our ability. But then we have to switch to the next thing. We have to make dinner or we have to like show up for our family in thoughtful ways. So
Mhm.
I would say thinking of it in that way that I'm not taking away from this, like I'm actually giving to something else. So like what is that I'm giving to?
That's a good way to think about it. You're not taking away, you're giving instead. I really like that. Okay, so I would love for you to talk to me about goal setting. Why is goal setting important in everyday life and in all aspects of our life, not just work and not just, fitness? Why is goal setting important everywhere in our life?
I think so Pope Francis talked a lot about like the importance for dreaming. And for me this is like very much connected to goal setting, like having these high ideals like who am I? Where am I going? Like what mark do I want to leave on the world? And goal setting is kind of bringing that dream into like concreteness and practicality. And so it's breaking down these like big aspirations into things that we can actually live out in the day to day. And when we don't dream and we don't goal set, we kind of become robots. Like we lose that capacity that's like very human of like um using our will, using our intellect, using our reason to really like create things that make a difference. And so for me, that's kind of what goal setting kind of brings into play, and that it allows me to use my time well and to use my talents. And in order to do that, I have to know what those are first, but to be able to give back to others and society and give glory to God in the same sense. And so I think in that sense it's incredibly important. But on the flip side, it's also we're afraid of it because we fear failure and we don't want to not make those goals. I remember talking to a lot of people about like I was serving people about like planners and how they use them. And people hated the fact when there's too many prompts or like goals because they're like, but if I don't fill it in, like, I just feel terrible about myself. And you're like, well, like there should be a little bit of remorse. Like, yeah, I like committed to this and I didn't do it. But we need that like accountability. I think it's so interesting because in many other areas of our lives, whether it's financial or physical, in terms of like how much weight we're gaining or not, or how much muscle mass we're accruing, now that you have the aura rings, like, all this information, there's a lot of feedback. But in terms of like my dreams and God's plans for me that I've discussed with him and for the world, there isn't a lot of accountability. Like it has to come from me. And I think that's where the goals come in to make it kind of to make it concrete. And so like accepting that we're not perfect, but we desire this like striving for greatness. And it allows us to also begin again because we see where we're failing and where we're not measuring up. Um, for me, I found that it's helpful to create like annually as a family, we create like a matrix of like where we want to grow. And then we have our main categories that are helpful for growth. So whether it's spiritual, physical, cultural, interpersonal, financial, whatever, you can pick those out. And then from there, you can break it down to the most simple goal possible. So for example, if you're trying to work on order, you're not going to say like, I don't know, I'm going to live a schedule from day one, kind of like what we were talking about. Like maybe I'm going to wake up with my alarm clock this month. Like that is my goal. Next month, I'm going to get fully dressed after waking up down to my shoes because in the brain, like the neuroscience is like, all right, we're ready to go. We're already on the move. But like very concrete things that I can actually say like, hey, I'm growing. Like I'm working at this. I'm striving. But I think that's where like sanctity comes in, like where we see like where we want to be, where we are, and we're working at it.
That's really helpful. And, I would love to hear more about how to set concrete goals in areas of life that are harder to track. So like we always think of goals in our finances. I want to have X amount in my bank account. I want to pay off X amount of debt in this time, or fitness. Like those are easy things to track. You have metrics, you can
Super.
see your progress. So how do you set goals in areas of life? For example, like I want to yell less. I want to be more patient. Like how do you set goals
Hmm.
in those, areas of our lives that are important to work on, specifically like virtues is what I'm thinking of, or that's what that example was. How do you set goals in areas of life and track them so that you can see your progress? Because I just feel like the more concrete it is, the easier it is to be able to progress with that goal and to, you have those wins and then you have that dopamine hit and you're encouraged to do more. And so it just like it's easier to accomplish goals when you have like concrete milestones.
I think that's a good point. I also think when we're creating goals, it's super important that they're positive. So if it's that I want to yell less, like to ask yourself those five, why do I want to yell less? Because I get angry for no reason. Like, why am I getting angry? And getting to the core of it and being like, I just want to love more. And so you're like, okay, what's something that can help me work on that? And maybe it's when I have music on, I'm more joyful. So my goal is to like have music during the time of day when usually I'm most cranky because things are just chaotic and the kids are everywhere. I'm trying to get dinner on the table, whatever. But like being concrete about knowing yourself really well and then being like, what is something positive that can flip that around? Or it could be that you're like super hard on yourself and you're just seeing like all these things. And we can also be the opposite of like, I'm failing at all these things. Like, I just need to do better or I need to like whatever. And instead, maybe flipping and being like, have I let God love me today? Like, in what ways have I seen him show up that it only speaks directly to my heart? And so maybe I'm sensitive to beauty. And there was an amazing sunrise that I caught this morning because I was up early. Or my favorite song came on the radio. It's like, wow, like that's such a pick me up. Whatever it is, like those little things. But checking in at the end of the day, like, was I aware of that? Like, yes or no? Or was I aware of like that time? And maybe it's the yelling. Instead of like shutting down the yelling, it's like I want to work on starting over more so my kids see that I can ask for forgiveness. Like that's such a gift for them that they know how to like ask for forgiveness and like begin again more quickly each time. Like that's huge. And so that's also a virtue that you're like sharing with them like, okay, mom can have a quick temper, but also she has a big heart and like recognizes with humility when she messes up. And so kind of focusing on those positive aspects of where we're lacking I think usually helps us and also gets us more excited, like, oh yeah, like I can strive for that. Like I can work on that. But I think to your point, it's really, really important that they get very concrete because if it's this idealized, like I want to be more cheerful, you're like, okay, great. Or I want to pray more. You're like, well, nice. But what does that look like? Like translate that
Mhm.
into like real everyday things. And so maybe if it's I want to live in the presence of God more, like you choose one aspiration or short prayer from the gospel, from anywhere in the Bible, um, or you pick a spot. I don't know. We have like, for example, an image of Our Lady at the bottom of the stairs. And so when we go up, we say, Lord, may you increase. When we go down, Lord, may I decrease. So something that like kind of triggers that throughout your day. That's very concrete. That you can be like, okay, yeah, I'm doing it. At least in that like up and down, I'm checking in with our Lord.
I love that. And I love having like a physical reminder in your life. I personally call those like roadblocks, even if it's not a roadblock, but something to like snap you out of your
Yeah,
autopilot and to, you know,
totally.
to bring you to your goals or what, whatever aspect of life you're trying to change. Having that physical reminder or something in place to do that is really, really important. So I'm so glad you brought that up. So, we have been talking about living an integrated life, but can you talk about why work-life balance is a myth? Because we've heard that term for years. I mean, I've heard it for a decade, like at least a decade probably, work-life balance, work-life balance, but I don't think true balance is ever really achieved. So can you talk about why that's kind of a myth and why an integrated life is more important than trying to find balance? Those Who Mourn magazine is a monthly online magazine that points people who are grieving to the abundant treasury of goodness, truth, and beauty found in the Catholic faith. Through personal stories, wisdom from the scriptures and saints, glorious hymns and prayers, poetry, and beautiful artwork, Those Who Mourn helps you lift your heart and mind toward the eternal and fix your eyes on Christ, the source of our hope and comfort. The creator of Those Who Mourn understands that grieving takes time. You'll find stories and saintly writings that allow you to slow down from the busyness of everyday life and carve out some time to process your pain. And if you'd like some support along your grief journey, our online community is a wonderful place to find encouragement, connection, and practical tools to help you process and heal after the death of a loved one. Visit thosewhomournmag.com and discover a balm for your broken heart that's rooted in our beautiful Catholic faith. That's thosewhomournmag.com. Allison Ramirez is the founder of Trinity Tree Publishing, a small business dedicated to helping Catholic authors write, edit, and self-publish their faith-based books. She has degrees in English and theology and is an award-winning author set to release her seventh book this year. She is the author of the Rosary Invitation series of 4 devotionals and the Divided Kingdom Christian Young Adult Dystopian trilogy. Within her small business, she works primarily with authors through the book editing process and as a one-on-one coach through self-publishing. She has newsletters on Substack, a YouTube channel on book publishing from a Catholic perspective, and a podcast where she interviews other authors on their publishing journeys. Allison is passionate about helping authors bring the true, good, and beautiful books the Lord has placed on their hearts out into the world. You can connect with her via her website at trinity.treepublishing.com. And I just have to say, this Mother's Day, whether you're a biological mother, foster mother, adoptive mother, godmother, or just spiritual mother to so many other women out in the world, I highly recommend checking out this little gift to yourself of publishing that book that's always been on your heart. At least begin to explore the process. So check out Allison. Again, you can find her at trinitytreepublishing.com.
Sure. I think when we hear work-life balance, it makes work into something that's like to be avoided. And we know that like God made man to work. Like we see this before the fall. Like Adam was told to till the land, to till the earth, which is like real work. And after the fall, it became something that was burdensome. But from the very beginning, it was something good. And now we know that when we do it well and for God, this is our like a path to sanctity, a path to heaven. And so it's something very good if we're able to instill it with that kind of eternal supernatural view. Um, and it's not separate from life, but it's part of life. And when we view it as something separate, then it becomes this burdensome thing that I'm avoiding. And whenever I have to do it, and whenever there's any sort of discomfort, that's bad. So like all discomfort, all suffering should be avoided. If we have that mindset, gosh, like life is going to throw many curveballs at us, and we're never really going to be able to be happy because we're not going to be comfortable or without work until we're in heaven. And so, we have to like figure out how to like really integrate this um that like happiness in heaven is for those who know how to be happy on earth. I think San Jose Maria Escrivá said that. And so we need to figure out like how do we do that through our work, and how do we live this like integrated life where through my work I'm bringing others and myself like closer to God. And so through sanctifying it by doing it well, by doing it with joy, by doing it with virtue, that it's something that isn't lived in balance, but is lived in 100%. And they always talk about this in like marriage talks, like you don't give 50-50, like both give 100, and then you get this beautiful marriage. Same thing with our life. Like we give 100% of ourselves all the time. And so it's integrated. But if we try to have this balance, we'll never be satisfied because it doesn't actually exist in us. We're holding so many things at the same time, and at different points they need more attention one than the other. And we see like even God says that he's like a jealous lover. And so we're not going to put him second because we're like, oh, well, mass is an hour long and I need to do this thing. And so to have balance, like maybe I should skip it. Like, no, it doesn't work that way. We can't be like calculating. And so there has to be this like integration of values beginning with God, and then everything else kind of follows underneath it.
That's a really, really good distinction. And I have been having discussions recently with my younger siblings. I'm the oldest of 12, some of them who are about to enter the workforce or in the workforce, how so many young people today, I guess not all of them, but many young people today feel like a job is a job and they're never going to like it and it's always going to be difficult. And I'm like, I don't believe that. And yes, of course, everything you do in life is going to have its difficult moments. You're going to have moments where you don't like it, where it challenges you, where other people challenge you. But I think the work in and of itself can be something that we love because we can find purpose in it. And even if it's just like maybe you're a trash man, that is okay. Like that has a huge purpose. You are helping so many people. And so I think it's important, like you said, to not see work as this burdensome thing, but rather something we were made to do because we were made for it, and we can love it, and it can be very sanctifying. It's never going to be perfect all the time. Nothing in life is, but it can be this beautiful thing that helps us get to heaven and that we can find lots of purpose in. I don't know about you, but I have recently, I went through the whole, like, getting on board with the whole, like, trad wife thing on Instagram, and not that that's wrong, but I feel like I find so much purpose in work I do like this, and though it's not my whole life, it is very fulfilling to me, and for a while, I felt, like, shame in wanting to work and wanting to do things, which I wanna talk about the definition of work because many things in motherhood and homemaking and all that are also work too. But work in the traditional sense of like a job or running a business or this podcast or whatever. I felt like as a Catholic woman that I shouldn't want to do that, that I should only really want to be doing things with my kids or things with my husband or things at home. And I would just love to get your perspective on that too, because I'm really coming around to the other side, seeing like, what work in all different aspects of life, in my motherhood, in my marriage, in my home, but also in a career can be just as important, and it's not doesn't make you less of a Catholic woman, and there shouldn't be any shame in that. But I don't know, I'm still really working through that internally, and I'd love to get your take on that as well.
Yeah, I think it's a great question. I think it's one probably that every like modern woman almost has to like ask herself. And I think we also have to think about like what are my reasons behind working, particularly if I'm a mom. And so we know that like the work of raising children and educating souls is like incredibly like, probably the highest work that we could probably ever do. Um, but, like, sometimes there's needs to be outside the home, whether that's emotional, whether that's financial for the family, and that's not bad, and in fact, we see it in, like, some of the saints. You have Saint, like, Zélie Martin, like, her company ended up being the one that supported the family in the lace making, or Saint Gianna Bertamolla, who is, like, the doctor. And so even thinking about that, it's up to each kind of individual family and thinking, also, why am I doing it? Am I doing it because I need, like, affirmation outside the home? Okay, well, then maybe that's a conversation I need to have with, like, our Lord and my spiritual director, or am I doing it because this is, like, a gift that I have, and also it brings me a lot of joy, and allows me to give back of myself more to my family because of the way that I'm made. And so kind of, like, asking those thoughtful questions, I think that should help guide the conversation, but that no one's kind of like a cookie cutter, and it's not evil to work outside of the home, nor is it wrong to stay and be a full-time at-home mom. That's also, like, very incredibly noble work, probably the most noble work. Um, and so that's kind of my, like, gut reaction to it. I think over glorifying kind of the trad wife, I think that's actually for a sector of few people who have just, like, excess money where they're able to, like, be at home and bake everything from scratch, and, like, that's beautiful, but, like, probably not accessible for most people, at least that we know.
Mhm.
And so also, like, being aware of that kind of as a trend.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think even though it can look like old fashioned or whatever, it's still very, very nice stuff. And it is definitely a luxury. And this is not, I mean, my mom was a stay at home mom and they have to sacrifice a lot to do that. So I'm not saying it's not a sacrifice, but
Right.
also in today's world, things have changed so much, in 20, 30 years, and it's not always possible for everyone to stay home on one income, even if you cut literally everything in your life. Like sometimes the shovel's not big enough to pay for your basic needs, and moms have to work too. So coming to terms with that in a new way as I'm working through, what I really find joy and I find passion and I feel called to certain work, and I think
Totally.
that's okay too. So I'm glad I got to bring that up. And then I also want to talk about work. Like we've been defining it. Well, we haven't been defining it. And that question was defined as career, but work is also everything we do. Work is the laundry, work is the dishes, work is wiping runny
Right.
noses. So, I mean, how do you and this is where I guess
So
I struggle. So I guess I'm just like dumping all my struggles in this episode. I've struggled to feel as accomplished because I love like setting goals and accomplishing them or feeling productive. I struggle to feel productive, like I've done something, when the task or the work doesn't have a nice concrete outcome. Like even the laundry, like I can see it's done and the pile's gone and it's folded and put away. Like that feels better. But there's so many tasks and things we're called to do in life that's work where it's not such a pretty outcome. You might not even see it. You might not feel it. Sometimes I really struggle with that kind of work. So do you have any, I guess, advice or suggestions for work and aspects, of our life or areas of our life where you don't get to see the outcome. It's not visual or you don't feel the outcome, but the work is still important.
Yeah, I'm with you in that boat. I think just like the changing diapers, nobody's gonna be like, "Wow, you did a great job changing that diaper. That laundry is
Yeah.
immaculately folded." It's not gonna happen. Like we would love that, but it like won't happen.
Yes.
And I think it's so beautiful too that we don't have that. And I think that's part of like something that we can thank our Lord for, that like that actually helps us deepen our interior life so that we see like, wow, I need a lot of, like, positive affirmation. Like, why do I need a lot of positive affirmation? Where am I looking for my affirmation? Is it, like, from the outside and others, or am I content, like, doing it for you? And so, like, with our goal of being, like, doing and disappearing so that it can really be totally for God, that work almost carries more meaning because nobody does see it. And so, like, being grateful that we have that opportunity to have work that doesn't have the accolades with it because it does resound more in eternity in the sense that like it is only for God that we're doing and he's the only one who sees it. Um I think also being able to like laugh at yourself in those moments of being like, dang, like nobody saw me do like X, Y, and Z and it was amazing. I just said that the other day to my husband with a parallel parking job that I did. I was like, this nobody saw, but it was so good. I was like,
Yes.
why did I need him to know that? But like, it's funny, that's how we are. And so like
Yeah.
even being kind of like laughing with our Lord and being like, hey, like I realize I need this, but I'm gonna give it to you and like rely on your grace for like the I don't know, the kickback that I was looking for from others. Um, yeah, and I think it's beautiful to even just like praying about the time when we have those types of tasks. Like typically in the beginning, I don't know, we have jobs that are outside of the home maybe or in different settings and we get a lot of feedback and I feel so good and we're just used to it. And then kind of little by little it gets pulled away, especially I think this happens in motherhood. And you're just like, man, I'm tired. And I was like up all night with a baby, but nobody else knows that. And like, here I am at this, whatever. And so we can kind of get in that like self pity or like, wow, like I'm the martyr here. Like this is amazing. I look this good at this time of the day. Whatever. Instead of being like, Lord, like I gave this to you from the beginning, like, and it's for you. So like take it all and help me not to say a word about it. And then when I do say a word, being like, all right, like I'm going to bring that up in confession that I am consistently like looking for pity from others and I can't just like be content with our Lord loving me. Um and so like being, I don't know, kind of like a self-knowledge piece about like how can I really like love through this work and really use it to work well, even more than my other jobs because in the other jobs they're giving me a pay raise or a bonus or a pat on the back and here I don't get it.
Mm. Yeah, that's true. That is definitely something I struggle with, so I'm working through it, but I really like that. That's helpful. Even I like the parallel parking example and just like laughing with God, like, I know you saw that. I know you saw. So, pat pat
Totally.
myself on right?
Yeah,
That's so funny. Um
totally. Totally.
so for women who are listening and they want to bring like more peace and order in their life, what is the first thing you would encourage them to do?
I think when we feel like we're lacking peace and order, it's because we haven't brought our day to God. And so I think pausing to like let God love us and recognizing it that like at the end of the day, doing like a daily examination of conscience, I think is super helpful. At the end of the day, maybe a little bit before the end, because by the end we're exhausted, but checking in with him and being like, hey, like how did I let you love me today? And kind of not about me doing, but like about me being like his daughter. Um but to do this, like, we obviously, like, need time to get to know him. So maybe it could be helpful, like, waking up 10 minutes early from what you're waking up now and just having those 10 minutes of quiet with him, like, setting up your day together, first thing, and then taking notes in your prayer and being like, "Okay, where is God calling me to grow today?" And being open to that, like, capacity to growth that he's not asking for my perfection. He doesn't need the perfect schedule. He doesn't need all of these, like, outcomes, but really, like, he just wants me to love him and let myself be loved. And then with that, like, going to bed on time too, so that I'm able to, like, show up for those 10 minutes in the morning and not just, like, exhausted hitting the snooze, because that's a basic human need, rest. I think we all probably could get better at it.
Yes. I know, I really struggle with that. I'm finally like, my youngest is almost about to be 2, and I'm like, "Okay, I don't have a baby. She still wakes up at night, but I still I'm like, man, I am finally in a place where I probably should get up with my alarm, but it is always still hard. So I relate
Totally.
to that on so many levels. This has been such a wonderful conversation, and I just think it's been really helpful because I know people, whether they are, the opposite of me and the more go with the flow, doesn't matter what we do type, or people like me who are very much, I want to do 5,000 things in the day. I think this is very realistic and very grounding for all of us to be like, this is what's realistic. This is what we should prioritize. You don't want to pack too much in. So people like me need to take notes on that. But also we do need to have goals. So people who are more nonchalant and couldn't, don't care quite as much about how the day goes can have a little bit more structure. So I really appreciate how tangible this conversation has been. If there is one thing that you could tell every woman listening to start today or tomorrow, what would it be?
I would say to laugh at yourself more.
I love
I
it.
think sometimes we take ourselves too seriously and then we're afraid of goal setting, we're afraid of failure, and just laugh at yourself and be like, all right, I'm gonna try and we'll see where it goes, and then be at peace.
I love that. That is so true. I love it. Well, Carolyn, thank you so much. Where can people find you, and tell us a little bit more about your brand as well?
Sure. So I created a lifestyle brand with my sister-in-law. It's called Sole Atelier. And the goal of the brand is to help individuals bridge the human and the divine. And so the products that we create exteriorly are beautiful, simple, and minimalistic, but you can't necessarily tell that they're Catholic, but they are meant to help you personally grow in your interior life. And so our main one is a annual planner, so a notebook and prayer journal, and so it has space, kind of make it your own, but at the same time has space for goal setting. We partner with Optimal Work, so Dr. Kevin Majors, Harvard professor and psychiatrist, to kind of help you have those tools to be the best professional you can be and the best individual daughter of God. And so you can find us at soleatelier.com, SOLE atelier.com. And then we're also on Instagram and Facebook and LinkedIn. So feel free to follow us or join us there. We also have a discount for all of the listeners here that's available on the website. So definitely stop by and check us out.
Awesome. Yeah, and all that will be linked in the show notes as usual, but I just like for people to hear it as well so they kind of get the name recognition. Well, it was so nice to chat with you. Thank you so much for being here today. And then also thank you so much to today's sponsors, Those Who Mourn, Trinity Tree Publishing, Vines in Full Bloom, and Contemporary Saints. It was just such a good episode. I feel like I learned so much today, and if it helped you, please send this to your friend, your mom, your sister, anyone who you think could use a little more peace and order in their life, because honestly, who couldn't? We all could. So thank you so much for being here, and I will see you all in 2 weeks.